Our friend Wayne Beminster is a friend. He's a friend to all. He embraces humanity with such beauty. As a family physician and a clinical assistant professor at UBC, he is also an author and is dedicated to finding solutions for people suffering in chronic pain. He's committed always to assisting the connection between the mind and body, and he quit his regular practice after 17 years to provide services for and to offer scientifically proven effective treatment methods so that all patients would not have to deal with chronic pain. In a recent TEDx talk, he shared how he retrained the brain to reduce pain, and he moves forward always on his journey of healing. And tonight, he is going to empower us with his talk that will include the oneness that community brings, how this embodies an important spiritual practical concept, focusing on environment, mind and body, and spirit. So without further ado, Dr. Wayne Beminster with the Community of Oneness.
Well, thank you, Janet. It's wonderful to be back here at the University of Vancouver, sharing this forum once again. I love the topic, the community of oneness, because it really allows a perfect forum to discuss the multiple layers that all of us interact with on a daily basis. So we're going to first start with the environment. And just like Noel was sharing about an experience that happened today, I'm going to share about an experience that happened to me on an environmental level this week. Now, I had the unfortunate experience of losing my wallet. And this is something that I've never really done, I think ever, regarding losing the entire quantities of the wallet. And it put me into that state of shock and realizing self-doubt. What did I do? I went through all the processes and I was just left with this, oh my goodness. You know, obviously there's things to do when you lose your wallet, like going up the banks and call the police, and I did that. And then something wonderful happened, which illustrates the power of community, where we're here to talk about tonight. And it was a phone call from the police station. They said, yeah, we found your wallet. And I said, well, is there anything in it? And they went, yes, all the cards are there, but the cash, there's no cash. So I lost my cash. But anyway, you know, and another thing happened 24 hours later. I was driving around with my family and I got a phone call out of the blue. Who's this number? And it was a lady who'd found my card on the side of the road. They looked up my name, said my name on it. There's only one Wayne Beminster, I believe. And she found my name, tracked me down, gave me a call. And it was such a beautiful moment because I just got that feeling that no matter what happens in this world, we're connected. And it ties into this law of conservation that I've been studying recently, which states that there's always a negative with a positive. There's always a positive with a negative, instantaneously on the planet. It's almost like the magic of life is around us. And what we need to do, if we're really struggling with the negative, like I had to dig deep when that wallet was gone and the feelings of loss was there. And I just gave a gratitude thought, a gratitude moment for whatever was going to happen, because I didn't know. And lo and behold, I was fortunate enough to get my wallet back. And so too with other areas of life. And I encourage you and myself to reflect. And when we get to the negative circumstances in our environments, ask the question, what's the positive in this? What is this good for? And wait and see and look for it, search for it, open your heart to it. And when we understand this principle, all of a sudden the negatives are balanced by the positives. The positive balanced by the negative. So you can flip it around and do the opposite way. But then we get this equilibrium, this law of the universe that is a balance, just like the human body. So moving on, the mind and the body, something I deal with every single day when I talk to my patients about pain. It's a mind-body problem. And one of the best illustrations of this oneness is looking and remembering that we ourselves on a cellular level, approximately 37 million, billion with a B, no, sorry, T, trillion, 37 trillion cells. But even more remarkable is within each cell, you consider the whole body. In fact, every second of the day, every second, there's 37,000 billion chemical interactions. That's 37 with 21 zeros. Chemical reactions per second covering all those cells. And if we just pause for a moment and just reflect on that and allow that fact to permeate your brain, and it's probably blowing your mind, but allow it to permeate deeper than the mind into the heart, into the soul. Because the miraculous thing is not the chemical interactions. The miraculous thing is it's always happening. There's an intelligence that's in our bodies that is always working out, always trying to help us return to homeostasis, to balance. It's a truly remarkable thing. And as I say to my patients, when you've got pain, it's a symptom of out of balance, and your body's communicating you a message. What could that be? And again, asking the question, what is the connection between this and that? Like low back pain, lack of emotional support. Headaches, the feeling of being out of control. It's a fascinating subject. But I believe that the body is communicating to us. And when we just ask the question, we're guided slowly, step by step, forward into understanding more and more about this mind-body connection. But at the end of the day, health and wellness is about balance, emotional, mental, and physical. And let's move on to the third subject, the spirit. I mentioned the intelligent design, or the universal creator, or God. The one that created the galaxies and the solar systems and the planets, our Mother Earth, and everything in it, including us. And then us back into the cellular level where there's 37 trillion of them. And inside those cells, there's nothing really but space, which ties us back to the galaxies. And when we look out there in the evening, we see nothing but space. It's all space, but there's an intelligence within the space that has a function, a purpose. And sometimes it's really difficult to see that. But I ask you to ask the question, where is the balance? Where is the meaning in things? And for me, it boils down to three things to help us move forward on a level of power and a level of oneness. And that is one, to slow down, stop, and consciously breathe. Breathe in the air, breathe in the spirit. And we relax our nervous system, relax our mind. And we give a thought of gratitude for whatever is going on. And if you've got trouble looking for things to be grateful for, think of your body and all the trillions of cells working miraculously as one. So you've got the gratitude, which is the heart, and you're calming the mind, balancing up those emotions, those thoughts, which often can be up and down like a wave. But when we're pausing and breathing consciously and living a life moment by moment of gratitude, there's a synchronicity, there's a balance, there's a oneness, and we move ever closer to that reality of the universe, which is the power of oneness. Thanks.
And I'd like to introduce a gentleman who is an amazingly positive member of many communities. He's a member of the TEDx community. He was our anchor speaker at the first TEDx Bear Creek Park. He's a gentleman who stands up in his community for his youth, and he's also a man who leads by example with his family. He's able to run through the Amazon, and he can absolutely just tear up the stage with his amazing voice. And we're lucky to have him here today. I would like to introduce Roy Campbell with his talk, It Takes a Village.
Thank you, Noel, for that kind introduction. I have a lot to live up to now, so I hope I don't let you down. I'd like to say thank you to Unity Church of Vancouver for allowing me to be a part of this conscious conversation and the power of three. I think this is probably the fourth time I've spoken with the conscious conversation, and it's always an honor. Ooh, it takes a village. You know, when I think about a village, I think about when I was about maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, growing up in Jamaica, and you could get away with nothing. I lived in Montego Bay, and you could get away. I swear, I could throw a stone at a window, and before that stone would break that window, my grandma would know what happened, and there were no cell phones, and I would get a smack around the head as soon as I walked over that doorstep. And that was just because somebody in the community looked out for everybody. That was a community where people say, hey, that's not okay. You can do better than that. That was a community where people, if you're on your knees, there would be a helping hand to pick you up. You know, later on, and I spoke about this in my TEDx presentation, as a young, wild teenager, 15, 16 years old in Manchester, England, after leaving Jamaica. Got caught up in all kinds of crazy stuff. I was running around with the local gangs, doing things that my parents did not teach me to do. I was working nightclubs when I was 16, 17 years old. And I'd already had a few tickets, been to court a few times, and convictions against me, and youth detention. And it was one man in that community, a stranger, who took the time to tell me I could do better than what I was doing. And that's what being a part of a community is about, is helping others and telling and finding the best in others and let them know that you can be better than this. I've been a youth worker now for about 3 decades. I've worked with hundreds of kids over those years. And I have to say, and it's hard to believe, I have never met a bad kid. I've worked in youth detention. I've worked in schools, drug and alcohol programs, extremely violent youth, and I've never seen a bad kid. And that's because I see goodness and greatness. I believe in every kid that I've worked with over the years. Just a few years ago, I was working in what they call an alternate program. It's an alternative to the classroom. It's a special program for kids with high-risk behaviors. And I've been connecting with this kid now for a few months. And I told him his behavior was getting a little bit crummy. I didn't say crummy, I actually said something else. And I said, you can do better than this. I learned a lesson in this conversation with this kid. He said, you don't know me. I said, really? I said, I know everything about you. I got your files right there in my office. I've read everything about you. He said, you don't know me. I said, tell me. Tell me about you. He says, this is how my day starts. I wake up, I make breakfast for my mother. I walk into her bedroom. And sometimes I have to put my hand under her nose to see if she's breathing, because she's a drug addict. Then I come to school. Then I go home and I do the same thing. That was his day. But he was brave enough to come to school every day. And the reason why he came to school is because he wanted that connection with somebody in our community. He didn't have it at home. He wanted to come to school. That was one of the bravest kids I've ever seen in my life. You know the courage it takes to get up, to see if your mother's still alive, to come to school? He was a brave young man. Get to know our kids in the community. Spend time with them. Even the rough ones, the ones you think that are kind of like going to steal your car. Say, hey, how you doing? Smile. You might be amazed about where they've come from and their history. I had another young boy, he wouldn't come to school. And I'd go to his house every morning, knock on his door. He would not come to the door. But I saw the curtains shake a little bit. And so the next day I come back and I knock again. And I saw the curtains shake a little bit more. And I smiled at the curtains. And I made it part of my routine that every day on the way to school, I would call by his house and knock on the door. And my knocks got a little bit louder and a little bit louder. Eventually he came to the door and said, "What? What do you want?" I said, "Hey, just want to say good morning." I said, "You want to go for coffee?" He said something which I won't say. And he said, "No," and slammed the door. The next week I went back again and knocked. I said, "You want to go for coffee?" He says, "Okay." Eventually, he came back to school over a course of months. That young man went on to college and got his Red Seal for plumbing. Let's not give up on our kids too easily. A lot of people write them off, especially now when our kids are going through this stage of returning back to school, the pandemic. There's a lot of mental health stuff going on in our community. We don't want to have a generation of kids who are struggling. It is up to us as a community to be a part of their lives. Let's raise the bar of expectation for our kids. I run an after-school program. It's mostly for kids who are different. Let's just say they're different. And it's a voluntary program. They can come, and I have, sometimes 25 boys showing up to my classroom after school. They just want to hang out. And we talk about everything on the planet. And every now and then we have these field trips that go out into the community. And when I look for volunteers to drive these kids in the community, people are shaking their head at them. They're not coming in my car, And I have a little pep talk with them. And I say, "Hey, listen, you represent you when you go out into that community. Let's give the community the best of you." I've been on many trips with these kids. I've taken them to the mall. I've taught them some life skills. I've taken them to hockey games. Not once have I had a student with disrespectful behavior. As a matter of fact, I've seen my students who have got all these labels of bad behavior open doors, pick up garbage. Not because I told them to, it's because I raised the bar of expectation. I expect them to. And that is what they did in their communities. The point I'm making here is our children are struggling, whether it be our own personal children or children that we work with. They struggle. It's okay to raise the bar of expectation. And you know what? If they don't need it and they fall, pick them up and say, "Hey, come on. I know you can do it. I believe in you." It was a man who believed in me who changed my life. That one stranger, that one encounter who changed my life. After speaking with him and him telling me I can be a better person, I have never been in trouble with the police. It was because of him who believed in me. 1 year ago, before the pandemic started, 1 year ago, I gave a presentation to teachers about how to connect with youth. And I said, you know what? There's no special formula to connect with them. Stand there at the door before they come in to the classroom. Say good morning. Smile. "I like your hair today. Beautiful shoes." Some of these kids don't get this interaction, especially boys. Boys are lacking male connection. There might be a father in the house, doesn't mean that the father's present. Our boys are seeking interaction, positive interaction. those teachers that says, hey, give them a high five. And you'd be amazed at what they will do. Just say hello. My message to our community is to connect with our kids more. And it just starts with a smile. No, we cannot do the high fives because of the social distance stuff that's going on. My message to the community, especially men, is to get involved in your kids' lives even more than you are doing. Get involved in your nephews, your friends' kids. Raise the bar of expectations, and you'll be amazed at what you can do. A lot of our kids are going to be struggling with mental health this summer or after the summer. So please, open up conversations with them. Encourage them to speak, to talk. And if they don't want to talk to you, reach out to helplines, kids' helplines, mental health support lines. It takes a village to raise our kids. Just because they're our kids doesn't mean that the responsibility is just ours. So next time you throw a stone, what are you going to do about it? You're going to run home before someone else calls?
Hi.
Oh, thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. And our kids, my kids are your kids, and your kids are my kids. Let's raise the bar for them. Thank you very much for having me today.